Nobody ever teaches you this. You grow up learning how to solve equations, memorize dates, follow rules, but no one sits you down and says the way you see yourself is the lens that distorts everything else, not reality, not other people, you. And that distortion, it's subtle. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It shows up when you doubt a compliment, when you hesitate before speaking, when you assume you're being judged, even when no one is thinking about you at all. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't see themselves clearly. They see a version shaped by fear, past mistakes, comparison, and quiet insecurity. And the worst part, they believe that version is real. But thousands of years ago, Stoic philosophers were already warning us about this. In this video, we'll explore 3 powerful Stoic truths that will help you see yourself clearly, reclaim your confidence, and stop being ruled by distorted self-perception. Because once you fix how you see yourself, everything else begins to fall into place. There's a version of you living in your head. It has a voice. It has opinions. It has a long list of things you're not good enough at. And most of the time you don't question it, we just listen. But here's what nobody tells you, that voice. It's not you. It's a collection of old experiences, misinterpreted moments, and emotional reactions that you never stopped to examine. Somewhere along the way you started building an identity out of incomplete information. A teacher who underestimated you. A failure you never fully processed. A comparison that made you feel smaller than you were. And slowly, quietly, you turned those moments into conclusions. I'm not confident. I'm not smart enough. I'm not the kind of person who succeeds. But Stoicism challenges this at the root. Because, according to Stoic philosophy, the problem is not what happens to you. It's the meaning you assign to it. Epictetus said it clearly. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. Think about that for a second. It's not the event that defines you. It's your interpretation of the event. 2 people can fail at the same thing. One walks away thinking, I'm not good enough. The other walks away thinking, I need to improve. Same reality, different identity. So what happened to you? At some point you stopped questioning your interpretations and started accepting them as facts. And that's where the distortion begins. You don't see yourself as you are. You see yourself as you've been conditioned to believe you are. And the mind is convincing. It will replay the same thoughts until they feel like truth. It will highlight your flaws and ignore your progress. It will build a case against you using selective evidence. But here's the dangerous part. Once you believe those thoughts, you start behaving in ways that confirm them. You hesitate. You shrink. You avoid opportunities. Not because you can't handle them, but because you've already decided who you are. This is what Marcus Aurelius warned about when he wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are filled with doubt, your identity will reflect it. If your thoughts are rooted in limitation, your life will begin to mirror those limits. And over time, something subtle happens. You stop testing your assumptions. You stop asking, is this actually true? Instead, you move through life trying to protect the identity you've built, even if it's holding you back. You avoid situations that might prove you wrong. You stay in roles that feel safe but small. You reject opportunities before they can reject you. Not because you're incapable, but because your self-image won't allow you to see anything else. This is why so many people feel stuck, not because they lack ability, but because they're operating from a distorted sense of self. And here's the truth. Stoicism forces you to confront, you are not your past interpretations. You are not the voice in your head. You are not the identity you built out of fear. You are the one observing all of it. That distinction changes everything. Because the moment you realize you can observe your thoughts, you also realize you can question them. And once you start questioning them, they begin to lose their authority. This is where clarity begins, not in changing who you are, but in seeing clearly what you are not. Most people spend their entire lives trying to improve a version of themselves that was never accurate to begin with. Stoicism doesn't ask you to become someone new, it asks you to remove what isn't true, to strip away the assumptions, to challenge the narratives, to separate fact from interpretation, because when you do that, you don't just feel different, you see differently. And when you see yourself clearly, you stop playing small in a life that was never meant to fit inside your fears. So the question isn't, who am I? The better question is, what have I been believing about myself that isn't actually true? That's where this begins. Let's go deeper. Even if you start questioning your thoughts, even if you begin to see that your self-image isn't entirely accurate, there's another trap. Quieter, more dangerous. You're still measuring yourself, constantly. But the real question is, by whose standards? Because most people don't realize this, the ruler you used to judge yourself was handed to you by the world. Not chosen, not examined, just absorbed. Somewhere along the way, you learned what success looks like, what confidence looks like, what a worthy person is supposed to be. And now, without even noticing, you compare yourself against those invisible standards every single day. You open social media. You see someone ahead of you, more successful, more attractive, more confident, and instantly you feel behind. Not because you actually are, but because you're measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. This is the distortion. You're not seeing yourself clearly. You're seeing yourself in comparison. And comparison is one of the fastest ways to lose your sense of self. Seneca warned about this nearly 2,000 years ago. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about how modern that sounds. Because today, your imagination isn't just your own thoughts anymore. It's amplified by constant exposure to other people's lives, carefully curated lives. And without realizing it, you start believing that everyone else has it figured out, that they're more certain, more capable, more together than you. So you lower your own value. You question your progress. You dismiss your achievements. You overlook how far you've actually come. All because you're measuring yourself against a moving target that was never real to begin with. Here's the Stoic perspective. Your life is not meant to be evaluated externally. It's meant to be lived internally. Epictetus put it simply, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's a hard idea to accept, because it means stepping outside the system of approval most people attract in. It means no longer needing to look impressive in order to feel valuable. It means redefining what success actually means for you. Not what society says, not what other people are doing, but what aligns with your values, your effort, your character. Because Stoicism doesn't measure worth by outcomes. It measures it by something far more stable, how you show up, your discipline, your integrity, your ability to act with intention, even when no one is watching. That's the shift. From external validation to internal standards. But here's why this matters now more than ever. We live in a time where your attention is constantly being pulled outward. Notifications, likes, views, opinions. Everything is designed to make you aware of how you're being perceived. And slowly, subtly, you start living for that perception. You start asking, how do I look? What do they think? Am I enough compared to them? Instead of asking the only question that actually matters, am I living in alignment with who I want to be? Marcus Aurelius wrote, look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig. That's the work. Not chasing more approval, not collecting more validation, but digging inward and building a standard that doesn't collapse every time someone else does better than you. Because here's the truth, there will always be someone ahead of you, more skilled, more experienced, more accomplished. If your self-worth depends on being better than others, you will always feel like you're losing. But if your self-worth is based on your own growth, your own effort, your own integrity, then no one can take that from you. And suddenly, something changes. You stop competing in a race that was never yours. You stop trying to prove yourself in rooms that don't define you. You start moving with a different kind of confidence. Quieter, more stable, less dependent on what's happening around you, because you're no longer asking the world to tell you who you are. You decided that for yourself, and when that happens, you don't just see yourself differently, you move differently, you take risks you used to avoid. You speak without overthinking every word. You stop shrinking to fit expectations that were never meant for you. Not because you become perfect, but because you're no longer measuring yourself with a broken ruler. So take a moment and ask yourself honestly, whose standards am I living by? And more importantly, are they even worth following? Because the moment you stop measuring yourself against the wrong things is the moment you finally start seeing yourself clearly. There's a moment right before you react. It's small, almost invisible, so fast that most people miss it entirely. Someone says something that hits a nerve, a comment, a look, a tone, and instantly your chest tightens, your thoughts speed up, your mind starts building a response. You feel the urge to defend, to explain, to prove something, and before you even realize what's happening, you've already reacted. But here's the problem, that reaction, it's not coming from clarity, it's coming from conditioning. Old patterns, old insecurities, old versions of you stepping in without permission. And in that moment, you're not seeing yourself clearly, you're seeing yourself through emotion. This is where Stoicism becomes incredibly practical, because at the core of Stoic philosophy is one simple but powerful idea. There is a gap between what happens and how you respond, and inside that gap is your freedom. Epictetus said it like this: make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. What's in your power? Not what people say, not what they think, not what they peeve. Only this, your response. But most people never access that power because they move too fast. They let emotion make the decision and then use logic to justify it afterward. Think about how often this happens. You send a message you later regret. You over-explain something that didn't need explaining. You take something personally that wasn't even about you. And afterward, when the emotion settles, you see it differently. You think, why did I react like that? That's clarity, but it came too late. Stoicism trains you to bring that clarity forward into the moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Read that again. You don't have to turn this into something. That comment doesn't have to become an insult. That silence doesn't have to become rejection. That mistake doesn't have to become a reflection of your worth. But your mind is fast. It fills in gaps. It creates meaning. It builds stories instantly. And most of those stories aren't true. They're assumptions. But when you react without pausing, you treat those assumptions as facts. And that's where the distortion grows. You start believing things about yourself that were never real. I'm not respected. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. Not because those things are true, but because you reacted as if they were. Here's what changes everything: the pause. That small space between stimulus and response. It might only be a second, maybe even less. But in that second, you interrupt the pattern. Instead of reacting automatically, you choose deliberately. You take a breath, you notice the emotion without becoming it. And suddenly, you have options. You can respond calmly instead of defensively. You can stay silent instead of saying something you regret. You can ask, is this actually true? Instead of assuming it is. This is what self-mastery looks like. not controlling your emotions completely. That's not realistic, but not being controlled by them. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Simple, but powerful. Delay. Not suppression, not avoidance, just space. Because emotions lose intensity when they're not immediately acted on. And in that space, your rational mind catches up. This matters more today than ever, because we live in a world that rewards instant reactions, quick replies, immediate opinions, constant engagement. You're expected to respond fast, to have something to say right away. But speed comes at a cost. When you move too quickly, you lose accuracy. And when it comes to how you see yourself, accuracy is everything. Because every reaction is reinforcing something. Either a version of you that is impulsive, reactive, uncertain, or a version of you that is grounded, deliberate, in control. And over time, those small moments build your identity. This is why people who are truly respected don't react to everything. They're not easily pulled into emotional currents. They don't feel the need to respond immediately. Not because they don't care, but because they choose when and how to engage. There's a steadiness to them. A sense that they're not being pushed around by every situation, and people notice that. Because in a world full of noise, calm is powerful. So the next time you feel that urge to react, don't fight it. Just notice it and pause, even for a second. Because in that second, you're doing something most people never learn to do. You're choosing who you are instead of repeating who you've been. And the more you practice that, the clearer you begin to see yourself. Not through emotion, not through assumption, but through awareness. And that's where real control begins. Once you begin to see yourself clearly, something shifts. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, consistently, in ways that are impossible to fake. You stop second-guessing every decision. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop looking around the room to figure out how you're supposed to feel about yourself. Because now, that answer comes from within. And here's what most people don't expect. When your self-perception becomes clear, other people start seeing you differently too. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you've stopped sending mixed signals about your worth. Think about it. When you doubt yourself, it shows in your voice, in your posture, in how quickly you backtrack or over-explain. But when you're clear about who you are, there's a steadiness. You speak and you don't rush to correct yourself. You decide and you don't immediately question it. You show up without shrinking or overcompensating. And people respond to that, not consciously most of the time, but instinctively. Because clarity is rare. Most people are still caught in the loop, reacting, comparing, doubting, overthinking. So when someone isn't doing that, it stands out. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." There's no performance in that, no overthinking, no endless self-analysis, just alignment. Your thoughts, your actions, your self-perception, all pointing in the same direction. And that alignment creates something powerful: trust. You trust yourself more. And because of that, others trust you too. Not because you demand it, but because you demonstrate it. This is the real outcome of Stoicism, not just inner peace, but external presence. A way of moving through the world that feels grounded, intentional, real. And in today's world, that matters more than ever. Because people are overwhelmed, pulled in every direction, constantly comparing, constantly reacting. Most are trying to become someone instead of understanding who they already are. But you're doing something different now. You're not adding more noise. You're removing distortion. You're questioning the voice in your head. You're stepping away from borrowed standards. You're creating space between impulse and action. And slowly, you're becoming someone who sees clearly, not perfectly, but honestly. And that honesty, it's rare because it requires something most people avoid: responsibility. Not for everything that's happened to you, but for how you interpret it, how you respond to it, how you define yourself because of it. That's where your power is, not in controlling the world, but in controlling the lens through which you see it. And once that lens is clear, you don't just feel different. You are different, more grounded, more certain, less dependent on approval, and more rooted in truth. So this isn't about becoming someone new. It never was. It's about removing what was never true, so what is true can finally stand on its own. And when it does, you won't need to convince anyone of your worth. They'll see it the same way you finally do. Let's bring this together. 3 principles. That's all this is. First, you are not your thoughts. Most of what you believe about yourself is interpretation, not fact. Second, you've been measuring yourself with the wrong standards, and that's been distorting your sense of worth. Third, your reactions have been shaping your identity, and learning to pause is how you take that control back. These aren't just ideas, they're tools to help you see clearly, act deliberately, and rebuild a self-image rooted in truth instead of fear. And here's what matters most. You're capable of this. Not someday, not when everything in your life is perfect, now. Because the ability to observe your thoughts, to question your standards, to pause before reacting, that's already within you. Stoicism doesn't give you new power, it shows you the power you've been overlooking. So start small. One thought you question, one comparison you reject, one moment where you pause instead of react. That's how this begins. If this resonated with you, tap like, and in the comments drop your affirmation. Which lesson hit you the hardest? Say it clearly. Own it. And if you're ready to keep building this mindset, subscribe for unapologetic Stoic truth every single week. Because this isn't just content, it's a process, and you're in it now. Become the master of your mind. Rebuild, refocus, rise.